My bill, Protect Children's Innocence Act, just passed through the Judiciary Committee.
This bill needs to be passed into law. There's no excuse for it not to be. Okay, Marjorie Taylor Greene just passed through committee a bill to ban so-called gender transitions for children on the federal level. Here is Representative Greene talking about it.
Hi, everyone. I have really great news. My bill, Protect Children's Innocence Act, just passed through the Judiciary Committee. Big thank you to Jim Jordan. Big thank you to Harriet Hageman. They did a fantastic job. This is a victory for children. We have to protect their innocence. We have to allow them to grow up. They can choose who they want to be when they're adults, but there should be no medical industry that mutilates their genitals, gives them poisons, and permanently changes their bodies. Next thing we have to do is get it through Rules Committee and then get it to the House floor for a vote for final passage. This is what we campaigned on. President Trump wrote an executive order to criminalize sex changes on kids, and this is the will of the American people. Stay tuned for more.
Now, there were some in this committee who were very upset about this bill, as you would expect. Representative Jayapal, who's one of the more on this topic, one of the more militant members of Congress. Let's listen to her outburst.
What is barbaric is this legislation. What is barbaric is targeting trans kids in this country who are not doing you any harm. Show me a trans kid who's doing you harm. And then tell me how many of you are parents that would do anything that you could to protect your kids and to make sure that they didn't commit suicide, that they were actually able to engage in the world in a healthy way. Tell me what you wouldn't do for your children. Because when you introduce legislation like this, it is not only stupid legislation, it is cruel, it is mean, and it interferes with your own conservative principles. You really want to take away the ability to allow parents to make decisions about their own kids' medical situation with their doctor? That's what Republicans want to do?
So as always, the supporters of trans ideology are just congenitally incapable of being honest. All they do is lie. That's their only move. False framing, straw man. That's all they do. And so we hear from Jayapal that this bill is an attack on trans kids, when in fact, of course, the point of the bill is to protect those kids, to protect so-called trans kids from the abuse being inflicted on them by people like Representative Jayapal. Now, keep something in mind when you watch a clip like that, which is that Representative Jayapal has a quote-unquote trans kid. She's already shared that her, and I think we've talked about it on the show before, that her child is trans, and I don't know if the child's I don't know if it's a boy or girl in reality, but she has a trans kid who I believe is now an adult. But even if I hadn't told you that, you would still know it because you can tell. At this point, any adult who passionately, emotionally defends the castration and mutilation of children is doing it because they feel like they have to. They have to because it's the only way, which isn't to excuse it at all, by the way. It's just to explain trying to explain the level of like emotional desperation that you saw. Because in that clip there, I mean, Jayapal is a total fraud and a phony, and one of the many Democrats in Congress who's very theatrical. But when you look at that, you could tell there's like real panic in her eyes. She looks like she's about to start crying. And that's real. Now, what she's saying is false. What she's saying is a lie, but the emotions are real because she has to defend the transing of kids because that's the only way that she can look at herself in the mirror or sleep at night. These kinds of parents, they have to, because the other option is to admit that they have personally facilitated or allowed or supported or pushed this kind of horrible abuse on their own kids. Right? The other option is for them to go back to their kids and say, hey, I got this wrong, and now your life and your body are destroyed. And it's my fault. And I'm sorry. And there's nothing I can ever do to make it up to you. Your life has been irrevocably changed in ways that cannot be reversed because of me. That's what they would have to say to their kids, and they can't. I mean, to say that would take a level of moral courage and integrity that these people don't have. They're not capable of moral courage or integrity. If they were, they wouldn't have done this to their kids in the first place. So that's why Jayapal is taking this so personally. It's why she's practically in tears over it, because she sees this whole discussion as a personal attack against her. She sees it as an indictment of her as a mother. And to that fear, I want to personally say to Representative Jayapal that you're right. It is an indictment of you personally. You're a terrible mother. You're a terrible mother and a terrible person. And you have done unspeakably awful things to your own child. Or at the very least, allowed those things to be done without protecting and defending your child. So yeah, you're a terrible person, a terrible mother. And if you feel like that's kind of what we're saying, well, yeah, that's what we're saying. And we need to protect kids from people like her. So this bill needs to be passed into law. There's no excuse for it not to be. It needs to make it needs to get a full vote, and it needs to. Every single Republican should be voting in favor of this. It's not only obviously the right thing to do, but it's also it will cost you nothing politically. 5 years ago, I mean, this should have happened 5 years ago. They should have passed a ban on this 5 years ago. They should have passed it. The moment, like the first time that a procedure like this was done to a kid, that should have been when a federal ban was passed. But it wasn't. And even 5 years ago, to vote yes on a bill like this to ban the quote unquote gender transitions of kids nationwide would have been, there would have been some political risks involved. Still should have done it, but there would have been some political risk. Now there's no risk. I mean, you've got the American public on your side. Almost everybody's on your side. And a lot of the people who aren't on your side are too embarrassed to even say anything about it at this point. There aren't that many people who are willing to loudly speak up in defense of the, chemical castration and mutilation of kids at this point, except for the most hardcore radical activists and people like Jayapal who are committed to this lie for life because of either what they've done to themselves or done to their kids. But everybody else, this is a widely popular position, and so there'd be no excuse not to pass the bill. If you'd like to see what else I have to say, you can access my full show by going to dailywire.com or by going to the Matt Walsh Show Twitter page. Hope to see you there. Godspeed.